Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide, and today we got the much-anticipated question and answer on refining and the MISC Expanse. And while I was pleased to have answers, I'm always pleased to have answers, I was less pleased by the answers themselves. In particular, the lack of specificity about many of the answers, because CIG has said that they were going to be getting away from announcing and selling ships without the associated gameplay loops. The questions about refining itself seem to be mostly framed as their goals, aims, and plans for refining, not what was actually being created. That does not make me feel confident that mobile refinery will be available in time for 4.0, and thus that there will need to be some sort of stopgap for refining at Pyro. Perhaps they could have at some of the homestead bases abandoned Planetside refineries from the pyrotechnic amalgamated days and based on the station refinery system, and that some of the habitations are constantly trying to keep them up and at risk of failing, and then when the Expanse is available for refining, to have those homestead refineries fail permanently because of the reduced maintenance. So let's go through these answers individually. What are the benefits of using a refinery ship compared to a station-based refinery? The most obvious benefit is that you have the refinery on site, meaning that you don't have to take the long trips to a station all the time. Another benefit is that the on-ship refining process is planned to take less time than the station, since you will be in full control of the process. You will also be unaffected by the refinery station's occupation level and when it's being used by other players. What was unsaid was the disadvantages of using a refinery ship. There needs to be some, because the time benefits of mobile refinery are huge, and there's really only one obvious candidate, and that is efficiency. The best station refinery processes top out at about 95% efficiency. The best mobile refinery results should top out at, let's say, 85%, 80% if an automated preset is used. The reason for the lower efficiency? Well, large batch economies of scale. Next question. How long will refining take using the Expanse compared to a station-based refinery? The aim is for it to be a relatively fast, skill-based process. You know the material that you want to refine and how to properly process it. You should be much faster than the big refineries. Also, you'll be refining much smaller quantities, globally speaking, per job than a station-based refinery would. Well, I guess I can make plans for creating plenty of how-to tutorials for managing the refinery processes. Next question. Will the Expanse have safe storage for volatile ore? For example, if I put raw Quantanium into the Expanse, will the time to destruction halt? No, the Expanse doesn't currently have safe material storage, so volatility will not be bypassed by storing it on board. However, it should halt when the refining process begins. So, don't take Quantanium on board unless you plan on starting refining it immediately. But the hidden great news is that you can take Quantanium into reactors, since there had been plenty of speculation that since the Odyssey and Starfarer could refine quantum fuel but couldn't refine anything else, that the Expanse wouldn't be able to refine quantum fuel. But this would imply that it could. But what is left unanswered is what it would be refining it into. Would the refining be into actual quantum fuel, or would it be refining it into some sort of intermediate product? Let's call it stabilized Quantanium, kind of like yellow cake uranium, that will then become the feedstock for the Starfarer Odyssey. So I wouldn't be ditching your org's plans on having a Starfarer in your fleet, because even if the Expanse can create the fuel, it doesn't have that refueling boom, and so you'd be stuck with just hand refueling. Next question. Will there be a mini-game for a refining like we have for the other professions? If so, can you share any details? We don't call it a mini-game, since the mechanic will be a little more complex than that. We have a general idea of what we'd like the player-driven refining process to look like. This isn't final and is subject to change, but currently the idea is. Well, I didn't realize there was a maximum complexity to a minigame, but oh well. Again, I was disappointed to hear that at this point they only had a general idea of what it would look like. It sounds like they only have a statement of goals and not even a prototype for it. First, you'll put your refinery sack from the delivery mining ship with the tractor beam and attach it to the intake socket of your Expanse. Then you'll analyze the materials. Based on the findings, you must decide which refining process you want to use. You'll pick either a predefined method with limited direct interaction or the manual approach, which has you directly interacting with the material through the interactions like grinding, melting, dissolving, and more. So the interesting that the various processes we see at refinery stations are just presets to the proportions of other various sub-processes. Our goal here is that you decide on how much effort you want to put into it. So you could take the easy way and pick a well-known method, or you could come up with your own refining recipe. I can imagine many of you are thinking, why would anyone take the less efficient automatic preset? Well, I think it would be more common than you think, because Expanse captains will be having to spend a fair deal of attention on the management game, lining up miners, arranging for transport captains, deciding on the next destination, and that just letting the refinery run in the back while you do all that will be common. Next question. Will we be able to begin refining and then store the Expanse via ASOP terminal without interrupting the refining process? No, the refining process is an active profession, so you'll have to pay attention to it. It isn't decided yet, but storing the ship could halt the refining process, reset it, or lead to the materials being wasted. This was my expected answer, and I hope that they have the refining process stopped with storage. That way you can also use the same mode to handle 30Ks and other real-life interruptions. Next question. What materials can the Expanse refine? The current aim is to have every raw unrefined material be refinable, so all minerals, gases, and metals, including scrap. We also like to refine gases into fuel. Again, I'm frustrated that they can talk no more than their current aim, but I did find the parenthetical mention of scrap as a raw material very interesting. It would be cool if you could load up a batch of scrap and then see the percentage of various materials in it, and then decide what to spend effort on. That would be giving refining with scrap its own equivalent to the mystery of mining, which is, what does this rock going to have in it? But it also opens up a whole new set of questions about process paths, since scrap isn't generated by mining. So first question, will station refineries be able to refine scrap? If so, I take my Hercules C2 to Lorville, load it up with tons of scrap, lift it to a refinery station, and then have the refinery cook it down to a range of valuable materials while I go back and rinse and repeat. On the other hand, if the station refineries don't do scrap for some reason, I can just take my Expanse to Lorville, park it in a hangar, buy scrap into the Expanse, refine it while still in the hangar, and then sell it back to Lorville, creating a never leave the hangar game loop. I'm not sure they've thought this one all the way through. Next question. Is it compatible with the Argo Mole, Grey Cat Rock, and Drake Vulture? The Expanse is planned to refine a vast majority of output from the vehicles above, so it shouldn't matter where the unrefined material comes from as long as the setup of the refinery matches the material's refining requirement. However, we're still looking into FPS mining and the Grey Cat Rock, as these methods output gems that might need to go through a different process than refining. But either way, they're planned to have a purpose in crafting. So the interesting thing here is the inclusion of the Vulture following the mention in the prior question about scrap. Will the Vulture be designed to dump the scrap it has generated in its hull grinding into bags? Because the only way to accept materials into the Expanse for refining is via a bag. I don't see any bags in the concept art of the Vulture. Is that a new hidden feature? Does the cargo bay at the rear of the Vulture actually contain a bag-filling apparatus and bags? If so, there won't be much room for component salvage. Next question. Refinery will likely require some use of power, catalysts, or other reagents. We plan to have your refinery be able to craft catalysts and reagents if you have the proper materials at hand. Frankly, I wouldn't expect crafting reagents anytime soon. Power is covered in the next question. For Tier 0 and even Tier 1 and Tier 2, I expect that we will be buying reagent canisters at stores and having them delivered by the haulers when they come out to deliver new ore bags. Because the Expanse does not have a lot of space for storage for materials, I expect the need for reagents will be small enough to fit in that small lower-level entry space. Next question. Will the refineries require power from the ship to operate, thus increasing hydrogen fuel consumption when in use? Yes, the refineries will be dependent on the ship's power plant. This might even impact your ship's energy balance when you run high-energy processes in your reactor. This was expected, but how about something else related to power? Signature. Will running that high-energy process make your Expanse light up like a beacon on our sensors many kilometers away? Interesting twists abound. Next question. Why does the Expanse have a single small shield when most ships of this size are better protected? Due to the energy-intensive nature of the refinery process, the compromise was only having a single small shield to allow the ship to have full shielding while the refinery processes are undertaken. However, the Expanse's current armor is above average for its size class, so the lack of the second shield won't mean it is necessarily weak. I frankly expected the energy and armor angle, but better keep your favorite fighter pilot on speed dial. Next question. Could you explain in broad terms how the sack system, where the refined material is deposited, will work? You might already be familiar with the sacks from the Prospector and Mole. They have the storage units located at the side that will fill with ore as you mine. They expand as they're filled and can be detached once full. They can then be picked up by other ships and their contents transferred for further processing. It seems more like the sack is becoming the other standard cargo unit of the game. The big question is, how well will someone be able to mix having sacks and various other sizes of SCU unit boxes mixed in the whole of a cargo ship like a Freelancer or Hercules? Next question. When the Expanse receives raw ore or via a container, does it reuse the same container when delivering the refined materials? Are the Expanse's 8-side saddlebags detachable? Yes, we plan on allowing players to reuse the sacks that the raw materials were brought in and refill them with refined materials. The current process is described below, although it could differ upon release. A prospector delivers you a sack of unrefined materials, which you then successfully attach to your Expanse's intake socket. You then either move the contents directly to your reactor or store it in one of the side sacks on the Expanse to be refined later. If you directly refine the material, you can move the material back into the original sack via the intake socket. However, you'll first have to rinse the sack to prevent the refined materials from picking up impurities. You can also swap the sack at the intake socket for another before refining is complete. Be careful though, the intake socket has a very weak connection and will not hold the sack in place during travel. The Expanse's saddlebags are planned to be detachable, so another ship could potentially pick them up. This sounds like a very flexible system, and I am imagining it a bit like the Starfarer's fuel pod interface, where if you've ever played with it, you can shift fuel from one tank to another by setting the intake and output directions and leaving the valve closed. The bit near the end about the rear intake socket not standing up to be able to be moved might provide an avenue for a solution to the problem with the Escrow System. Next question. What is the total cargo capacity for refined and needing to be refined material? Can it process 64 SCU worth of ore, but also have an additional 64 SCU in its saddlebags already refined? Like the Prospector and Mole, the Expanse utilizes the same folding sack design that allows a second set of pods to be stored on board in a compressed state. By default, there are 8 pods expanded, giving 64 SCU of capacity, and 8 pods compressed above them, giving an additional 64 SCU of capacity, once the initial 8 pods are detached. This allows the Expanse to stay in place and offload the material set of pods to a nearby cargo ship and continue refining a second batch. Expect to be paying small cargo ships to not just take your metals away, but also bring back the empties. Next question. Is the Expanse able to hold raw ore in waiting beyond the 6 jobs it can run at once? If so, will it automatically start new jobs in waiting without the input from the player? We plan on allowing you to store some amount of material directly in the reactor or in the attached sacks. However, it will not be refined until you actively start the process. So in other words, do not expect me to set up a queue of jobs to be managed automatically. Next question. Is a system being planned to allow players to charge for ore processing, like when refueling from another player's Starfarer? Yes, we plan on having a selling-purchasing system where players are able to sell their unrefined material to the Expanse, which will then be refined and sold on. It will also allow you to add a fee for refining. The thing is, this refining isn't as simple a case as the Starfarer. With the Starfarer, the 2 ships are connected, and if the connection is broken for any reason, both the transfer of product and the payment is stopped. Simple. But there are all sorts of contingencies with these bag transfers. What if the Prospector has to leave for some reason? How long does the Expanse have to hang on to the Prospector's product? If the Expanse is attacked in the middle of a consignment job, who takes the loss of the refined and unrefined materials? If the Expanse owner isn't a very good refiner and does an inefficient job, is the Prospector taking a financial hit as a result? And then what if something goes wrong in the transport? Who takes the loss? So honestly, the only straightforward solution, and thus the one you will likely see in the initial implementation, is that the prospector or mole sells to the Expanse, and the Expanse sells the refined goods to the hauler, and the hauler sells it to the end customer. That way, every pilot in the chain is responsible for the efficiency, safety, and profit of their own operation. And the escrow system only has to cover the transfer of the bag and can essentially be the same for each transaction. And the final question, the brochure illustration shows the pod loading into 0G via a tractor beam. Will this also work on a planet where gravity is a factor? That is the current plan, yes. That also brings up the possibility of the Immobile mobile refinery. So let's say you have a homestead and that you're making a central point of it in your org's operation, and you wish that the homestead components available you build included a refiner module, but they don't. Don't sweat. Just park the Expanse there and treat it like a stationary refinery. And now for an update on our Grow the Channel ship giveaway. As of recording, we are at 60% of the subscriber goal and 51% of the membership goal to release to someone their choice of the Anvil Liberator, that shipping ship for shipping your ships, or the Misk Odyssey, the long-duration exploration carrier. One entry per video. Members are entered automatically, and if the winner is a member as of the date of the winning video, they will win both the Liberator and the Odyssey. For non-members, just be a subscriber and comment using the secret word. And the secret word for this video is either of the two refinable contents that I found a surprising addition in the Q&A. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.